When tending site to service a Roastrunner oven, it is advised to let the oven cool down first. While this is happening, you may check with the deli manager to see if there are any existing problems with the oven that need correcting. Make sure you ask as to whether they are harvesting fat every night. Once you've done this, it is good to check in logs. Tap on settings, tap on logs. Tap on fault logs. Here we see a list of faults with this oven. Check the time and date to see if these are current. See the service video to correct any of these faults. Drain the oven floor. Do this by tapping on settings, diagnostics, and to the pin. In the bottom right hand side of the screen we have the floor valve section here. Tap on dump. This will dump the water out of the floor into the fat separator. It will dump both sides of the oven because the valve is on a common manifold that links both sides of the oven. We will know when the dump position has been reached because the voltage will go from 3.7 to between 23 to 24 volts. Once the water has drained from both sides of the oven and both sides are dry, you can close the floor valve. It will be necessary to close the floor valve now for procedures later on in the service. Between 23 and 24 volts has been achieved in the closed position, so we are sure that the floor valve is now closed. Using a 4mm Allen key, remove this screw. Remove the drain grate and thoroughly clean both sides. Do this for both sides of the oven. Inspect the door seals. If any part of the door seals are cracked or broken or have turned brittle, replace the door seal. Check the carbon bearing for free movement. This is the driven dog and the rack. Carbon bearing is in here. Hold the driven dog and you should be able to freely move the rack in each direction. Check the carbon bearing in the flat tray rack. Hold the driven dog and rotate the rack. This should turn freely. Ensure that both the hinge bolts on each oven door are tight. We are looking to make sure that these nuts in here are tight. Grab hold of the oven door and wriggle it up and down to see if you can feel any movement in the door hinge. If the door hinge is loose, tighten it. Ensure that the ball rider plate rides on top of this ball when the oven door is closed. This bottom roller is made from plastic and is sacrificial. These will wear out from time to time and require replacement. Close the oven door. The handle mechanism should have a reasonable amount of preload. If this is not present, see the instructions on how to adjust the door handle. Check to make sure that the door switches are aligned correctly. The correct clearance from the end of the switch to the door magnets is 2 to 3 millimeters. We must also ensure that the center line of the switch block is between the two magnets, so we have the correct height adjustment from center to center to center to center. We can also see in diagnostics if the door switches are reading. The right hand side top and bottom door switch are indicated here. When the door is open, it'll show 3.7 volts. When the switch reads and the door is closed, it should go to between 23 to 24 volts, as indicated. We can also check while we're here the gantry position. We can see we have an indicated 23.1 volts here because the gantry is closed. If we remove the gantry, we will see that the voltage comes off and we'll go back to 3.7 volts. Testing the floor fill jets. Close both the oven doors. Return the computer screen back to the home screen. Tap on settings. Tap on spray. We should see the floor fill jets working like this. Testing the wash jets. Tap on settings, diagnostics, now that we are in diagnostics, on the bottom left hand side of the page we have low idle. We want to turn that to the on position. This will stop the contactors from putting any power through to the oven elements and getting the oven hot while we are trying to work on it. These are the 3 wash jets that we are going to test: bottom, middle and top. The top 2 wash jets fire water at 45 degrees into the oven chamber. The bottom wash jet fires water directly across. It is essential that we test these and make sure there is no blockage in them. Put approximately 20 millimeters of water in the bottom of the oven. In diagnostics, make sure that both sides of the oven are rotating. This is indicated here. Now that both sides are rotating, we're going to turn the wash pump on here. We can now come across and see the wash jets working inside the oven. For wash jets that are blocked, they are easily removed with a spanner and cleaned out. For ovens that are severely blocked and have wash jets not functioning, it is acceptable to remove the 3 wash jets and run the wash pump with the nozzles removed. This will flush out anything that is behind the actual nozzle cavity. At the same time, you can clean the nozzles and replace them. A gas ram cushions the opening action of the gantry. So when it is pulled out, it should dampen the action like this. Also, when it is returned, resistance should be felt. Prior to moving the oven forward, it will be necessary to drain both the chambers and the fat separator. To do this, we need to go into diagnostics. Tap on settings, diagnostics. On the bottom right hand side of the screen we have the 4-valve control. Tap on dump. On the left hand side of the screen here we have the control for the fat separator 3-way valve. Tap on drain. This will drain everything from the bottom of the oven to the floor tongue dish. Before working on the Roastrunner oven, isolate the power supply. Turn it off at the switch, remove the plug and put a cable tie through the opening. This will ensure that nobody can accidentally plug in and run the oven whilst you are working on it. Before moving the Roastrunner oven forward, ensure that all the plumbing and electrical is free from behind so you have clear room to move. Loosen off this locking nut here. When the black plastic foot is free, release the brake and you are clear to pull the Roastrunner oven forward by the handles. This is the ducting that attaches to the Woolworths door. This does not move. This here is the seal area that is attached to the Roastrunner oven. When you roll the oven forward, it will be released at this point. Please ensure when you're putting the oven back into position that you correctly line up this flange and seal with this section of the ducting. After you have released the wheel locks on both sides and released these brakes, the best way to pull the oven forward is to grab the door handle short and use your body weight. Remove the firewall panel by undoing the 4 wing nuts and sliding the panel backwards. Clean around the bottom 2 fan runners. Most of the carbon builds up on the underside of the fan runner. Using the Technobake supplied cleaning tool, you can clean around the bottom of the fan runner and get behind the back of the shaft. There will be an equal amount of carbon build-up on the side of the fan runner wall. So insert the tool around and push it in all the way around and release the carbon from the fan runner walls. This is most prolific on the bottom 2 fan runners. At this point we have cleaned all the debris and carbon from the bottoms of the fan runners and the element box. We have blocked the floor drain with a rag and we have closed the actual floor drain at the 3-way valve. Use a dustpan and brush to remove all of the carbon and filth off the oven floor. Do this before removing the rag from the drain. This is absolutely critical because if we get any carbon or debris in the wash system, it will immediately block the wash jets. This gives us opportunity now to hose out the bottom of the fan runners and to hose around this bottom element. This will be the only time it is acceptable to use a hose inside an oven, and any staff members that are close should be made aware of the fact that only service personnel can use a hose inside the oven under these special circumstances. Once you've finished hosing all of this area, the walls and any other areas that may require hosing, you should have 10 to 15 millimeters of water in the bottom of the oven. To remove the calcium buildup in the bottom of the oven, we use Scale X. Use half the container of this to 10 to 15 millimeters of water in the bottom of the oven. Leave this in for 10 to 15 minutes. If this product is not available at the time, you can remove the calcium from the bottom of the oven with a scraper. Check to ensure that all the element retainer nuts are still in position and are tight. Where the oven elements go through the chamber wall, grab hold of the element and give it a wriggle, ensuring that there is no movement at the flange joint. Check to ensure all the fan runners are tight. Use a 10mm socket and extension to tighten any loose nuts. Please make sure that all the nuts are present. Clean the fat overspill weir and chute. Also check that there is no fat and filth built up inside the top of the fat tower in here, cleaning it out if it is necessary. Every 18 months this valve will need to be removed to have the inside of the three-way valve cleaned out. To do this, we remove the triclover clamp and the Austin door fittings here. Once the valve has been removed, clean out all of these ports and fittings. Use the floor cleaning hose to do so. To gain access to the top of the oven, please ensure that the power is turned off as there are moving parts. Remove the screws from the roof panels and slide them backwards. Check the top drive assembly. Check the belt to make sure that it does not have any divots, marks or fraying. Here we have an example of a perished belt. It is worn past its service life and it is completely obvious that it requires replacing. Check the drive chain for tension. We lubricate this with Never Seize. Check the proximity against the cam for clearance. It should be between 2 to 3 millimeters and centralized on this cam plate. Rotate the flat pulley. This in turn will move the oven shaft and you'll be able to listen to the condition of the top bearing. Should the top bearing be noisy, see the instruction video on how to replace it. Remove the top drive chain. Pull the idler back until it's loose and pop the chain off the sprocket like that. Rotate the plate sprocket. This checks the condition of the center shaft bearings. It should turn as free as this and you will feel it hit the drive dog on the rack beneath this plate sprocket. Check the gantry proximity. It should be between 2 to 3 millimeters from the tag that it reads. It should also be centered height-wise to read this. To gain access to the rear electrical panel. This is the rear of the oven and on the rear right hand side is the rear electrical panel. Do not remove this panel unless you are qualified to do so. To remove the panel, undo the 3 screws and slide it off. Double check to make sure the power has been isolated from the supply. Turn the oven's breakers to the off position. A good visual inspection of all the main wiring going to each contactor will be required. Any burnt wiring should be reported and replaced. This goes for all the main contactors, all the ones for the heating and the fan motors included. All terminations should be checked to make sure that they are tight. Also check for any rodent or cockroach damage in the electrical board. Any damage must be reported immediately. Pay particular attention around the I/O board and all these plugs and fittings to make sure there has been no cockroach damage in there. Inspect both plug and wall socket for burnt terminations. Should either of these be black and carboned, they will need to be replaced. It is now time to push the oven back into place. Reconnect the power supply, reconnect the floor drains, after servicing the Roastrunner oven, put it into wash. Do this by tapping the wash button on the bottom right hand side of the screen. This is an opportunity to look for any door leaks or any leaks around the plumbing at the back of the oven going into the tongue dish. It is an opportunity to check to make sure where a hood is fitted, that it is correctly fitted into the hood, and the wheel locks have been put in position. After approximately 30 minutes, the oven will ask to have the fat buckets empty and wash tablets placed in the oven chamber. The staff would normally place 3 tablets in each side, that is, finished wash tablets. After having a service, it is necessary to put in 6 wash tablets per side of the oven. After the wash tablets have been placed, you are clear to go and have the WAF signed and leave the premises.